So we'll start with meditation, and again, to give some balance to the Shamatha practice, I'd like to do another loving kindness meditation similar to the one we did this afternoon. So let's begin with that. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. So remember, vigilant posture is to keep the back nice and straight. And at the same time, allow the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. Using the out-breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. Allowing the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. And allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. and simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. Loving kindness is the wish or aspiration for ourselves and others to have happiness in its causes. And again, we can begin by cultivating loving kindness for ourselves and then expanding out to others. And we can begin by imagining the inner purity of our mind, a level of our mind that is untouched by any of the mental afflictions. To imagine this inner purity of mind in the form of a small, white, radiant sphere of light, centre of our chest, at the level of our heart. And arouse the thought, how wonderful it would be if I had happiness in its causes. May I be truly well and happy. And then with each out-breath, imagine rays of light radiating out from the sphere of light at your heart, filling your entire body and mind, and transforming into everything you need to be happy. So with each out-breath, breathe out the light of loving kindness, sending to yourself whatever you need to be happy, in the short term and the long term. And then imagine you've now found that state of genuine happiness. And rest in that state of well-being, resting in that inner purity of mind. And just as you wish to be happy, so does everyone else. So allow your field of loving kindness to expand out to the person seated next to you. They are just like yourself, and wanting to be happy. So arouse the thought, how wonderful it would be if they had happiness in its causes. May you be truly well and happy. And with each out-breath, imagine rays of light radiating out from your heart and filling their body and mind, transforming into everything they need to be happy. So with each out-breath, breathe out the light of loving kindness, sending to them whatever they need to be happy. And then imagine they've now found that state of genuine happiness, of inner well-being. And take delight in this. And then allow your field of loving kindness to expand out further. And allow your mind to move around. And whoever comes to mind, whether it's a friend, a stranger, or even a difficult person, attend to them. May you be truly well and happy. And breathing out the light of loving kindness, sending to them whatever they need to be happy. Your mind to continue to move around. Whoever comes to mind, whether it's an individual or even a group of people, attend to them. Breathing out the light of loving kindness. And then release all appearances and allow the mind to come to rest. Resting in that inner purity of mind, which is in the nature of loving kindness. In this evening's topic, we're going to look at this chart here. This is the sort of standard model you often find describing the stages of progress in the Shamatha practice. So this is a sort of a 9-stage model. And if we go over the next page again, remember the top said, the first sentence said, Shamatha is attained by progressing through the 9 stages, relying on the 8 antidotes to abandon the 5 faults. It is accomplished through the 6 powers and 4 mental engagements. So here we had those 5 faults and the 8 antidotes. So if we apply those antidotes to the faults, we can slowly move along these 9 stages to Shamatha. Shamatha is actually the diagram in the middle at the top, and we'll look at that tomorrow evening. So let's start down the bottom here. So of course we saw there's the meditator, and the 2 tools the meditator has, of course, in the left hand is a rope, the rope of mindfulness, tying the mind with the rope of mindfulness to the object, and in the right hand is a hook of introspection, the quality control. The elephant is the mind. The fact that it is black is symbolising this laxity or dullness. The monkey is discursive thought in general. The fact that it is black is symbolising excitement, the most common form of distraction. And here, at the first stage here, which is called directed attention here, what we notice is that the elephant and monkey are running wildly ahead of the meditator. And also we have these 6 straight sections of road, and these are called the 6 powers. This is the power by which we achieve that stage. So this first straight road is called the power of hearing, which means that we achieve the first stage through hearing. In other words, we have to hear about the practice. What is the practice? How do you do the practice? So we have to get some instructions on what to do so that we can engage in the practice and then make some progress, and we can get here to stage 1. And what we notice again is that the elephant and monkey are running wildly ahead of the meditator. So what we see and notice at the first stage of practice is that our mind is completely out of control. That if we use the example of focusing on the breath, we focus on the breath maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and then we get distracted, and we're distracted for long periods of time, maybe many minutes we're distracted, before we realise, oh hang on, I'm supposed to be on the breath, and we come back again to the breath for another 2 or 3 seconds, and then off we go again. That's describing stage 1, that we're hardly on the object at all. We're most of the time off the object, and only for a few seconds at a time are on the object. Now, of course, when this happens, when we start to meditate, then often people say to themselves, I can't meditate, I just can't meditate. In fact, I must be doing something wrong because my mind now seems to be worse than before I started meditating. If this is your experience, you can meditate. In fact, you're making progress. Because the very first sign of progress in this practice is simply seeing how chaotic and out of control our mind really is. Because if we've never sat down to focus on an object such as the breath, we may have this illusion that, my mind is sort of okay. I get a little bit dull and distracted, but, focusing on the breath, that can't be too difficult, surely. And so when we sit down and we try, and then we're hardly on the object, we're distracted most of the time, that's the conclusion we come to. And then often it's even worse than that, because in a group situation, people open their eyes and look around and everyone's super still. I'm the only one who can't meditate. I'm hopeless. Everyone else can meditate. So if this is your experience, you can meditate. In fact, it's the very first sign of progress. Just simply noticing how chaotic and out of control our mind really is. So, another point here, the flame. So we see the flame down the bottom here. It's very big. And if we sort of wind up the road a little bit, each sort of section it gets smaller and smaller until sort of up near towards the top here it sort of disappears altogether. The flame is the amount of effort we need in terms of mindfulness and introspection. Now our mindfulness and introspection are very poorly developed, so we need to put a lot of effort to hold the object, a lot of effort to monitor that. But of course as they improve, then our mindfulness and introspection get better and better, and then at some point it'll become very spontaneous, automatic. We won't need to put effort because they're so well developed. So that will take some time. So let's have also in Alan Wallace's Attention Revolution, he talks about each of these 9 stages. So let's have a brief look at what he has to say about this stage 1, directed attention. He says the first of the, it's on page 13, the first of the 9 stages leading to the achievement of shamatha is called directed attention. The sign of having reached this stage is simply being able to place your mind on your chosen object of meditation for even a second or two. If you're trying to direct your attention to a difficult object, such as a complex visualization, this may take days or weeks to accomplish. But if your chosen object is your breathing, you may achieve this stage on your first attempt. The first stage of directed attention is achieved by the power of hearing. According to Buddhist tradition, the most effective way to acquire fresh learning is directly from an experienced, knowledgeable teacher. First you hear instructions, then you follow up with reading, study and practice. The power of hearing refers both to listening to instructions and also to reading about them, especially if no qualified teacher is available. One of the first signs of progress in shamatha practice is simply noticing how chaotic our minds are. We are trying to remain attentive, but we swiftly lose our minds and slip into absent-mindedness. People who never sit quietly and try to focus their minds may remain under the illusion that their minds are calm and collected. Only when they try to direct the attention to a single object for minutes on end does it really become apparent how turbulent and fragmented our attention is. From a Buddhist perspective, the untrained mind is afflicted with attention deficit and hyperactivity. It is dysfunctional. Like a wild elephant, the untamed mind can inflict enormous damage on ourselves and those around us. In addition to oscillating between attention deficit and hyperactivity, the normal untrained mind compulsively disgorges a toxic stream of wandering thoughts, then latches onto them obsessively, carried away by one thought story after another. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorders and obsessive compulsive disorders are not confined to those who are diagnosed as mentally ill. The normal mind is prone to such imbalances, and that's why normal people experience such mental distress. Such disturbances are symptoms of an unbalanced mind. These two dysfunctional tendencies seem to be intrinsic to the mind. Hyperactivity is characterized by excitation, agitation and distraction, while an attention deficit is characterized by laxity, dullness and lethargy. When our minds are subject to these two imbalances, we have little control over what happens in our minds. We may believe in free will, but we can hardly be called free if we can't direct our own attention. No philosopher or cognitive scientist needs to inform us that our behaviour isn't always guided by free will. It becomes obvious as soon as we try to hold our attention on a chosen object. But if we continue to practice, we'll go around to stage 2 here. Stage 2 here is called continuous setting. This road here is the road of contemplation, reflection. So we get to the second stage by reflecting on the practice more, becoming more enthusiastic about the practice, but also understanding the practice better as well. And so what we see here at stage 2 is that the elephant and monkey are not running so fast anymore, and there's a little bit of white on the tops of their heads. So that little bit of white is the factor of stability and clarity. So now we're noticing a little bit in our meditation, a little bit of stability, a little bit of clarity coming in. So maybe at stage 2 we can maybe hold the object maybe up to a minute or two. But then still when we're distracted, we tend to be distracted for long periods of time. So even at stage 2 we tend to be more off the object than on the object. So let's see what Alan Wallace says here about stage 2, a few comments. So this is on page 30. In the second of 9 stages, continuous attention, you experience occasional periods of continuity, but most of the time your mind is still caught up in wandering thoughts and sensory distractions. Don't be misled by the name of this stage. Continuous attention doesn't mean that you can maintain unbroken continuity for long stretches, but that now and again you can remain centred for a sustained period without completely losing track of your object of attention. However, time and again you will still lapse back into coarse excitation, completely forgetting about the intended object of attention. When you can occasionally maintain continuity of awareness of bodily sensations for about a minute, you have reached the second stage. Here's an important point here, actually. He says the second stage is achieved by the power of thinking. The challenge in this phase of practice is to sustain interest in the object, and you can do this by thinking about the instructions between sessions. If you're a seasoned meditator, you have probably found that involuntary internal commentary on your practice can be an obstacle. Even the ongoing thought, here is the in-breath, here is the out-breath, can be an intrusion. However, internal commentary can also be useful, especially in the first 2 stages of shamatha practice. If you're thinking about the practice, at least you're not thinking about something else. So, as with any new practice, when we start that practice, a little bit of internal commentary is not only helpful, but it's often necessary to remind us of what we're supposed to do in the practice because we're not familiar with it. So a little bit of commentary can be very helpful, but as Alan Wallace says, is that once we become familiar with the practice, if we keep doing internal commentary, then it really starts to become an obstacle. So then we need to slowly let go of it. Because we're familiar with the practice, we can just do the practice without reminding ourselves of all the different things we have to do.